How you doing, guys? Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. It's been a couple weeks since I've been able to do a live stream. I just had a few periods of time I was out of town, just over both the weekends. So I'm back now. I actually was up in Canada for part of it. And then, so I had to purge the communism from my body after I got back. But it is a pretty beautiful area up there. Got to do some camping. So I'm going to try something. I'm going to do the drawing because we haven't done the September drawing yet for. We have the nuclear radiological and chemical survival manual. We have a Rule the Wasteland survival fishing kit and this Gerber active retention sheath knife we will all be giving away at the conclusion of this broadcast for the people who are on Patreon, paid members. Link will be in the description for that after this is over. What's up, Mr. Landfill? And the prizes for next month, you have one of these brand new Mr. Happy Flamers. It says front towards flame, but you can see I got one of him right up there. So you guys will be one of you guys will be the proud owner of that. And I have this mossy oak fixed blade knife, which is pretty sweet, brand new with sheath, which attached to all sorts of stuff, Kydex sheath. Heavy, sturdy knife, so we'll be able to give that away as well. So those will be for next month, but I'll do the drawing for this month's at the end of the live stream today. What's up? Yep, I'm still alive, still alive. Lots going on. Like I said, I just went on probably my last vacation for a while because I'm trying to save money and put every extra dollar into where let me get a sample. Get something cool for you guys. Some of this gold. We need it so badly, and I'm getting more. Like I said, is it time to get worried? Is the title. And I would say that it's not even worry or nervousness or anything, but I'm getting very antsy with like a very specific FOMO type feeling, a fear of missing out for the guys who don't speak internet. FOMO is just an acronym for fear of missing out. And that is the best description I have for the feeling that has been welling up inside me recently. It's like knowing that at least feeling like I know exactly what type of things are going to go wrong and not being able to maximize preparations for them when it's so obvious, specifically financial, getting as much money as possible into gold, silver, and just having some cash on hand is driving me a little crazy. But the good thing is we've got all the regular survival bases covered, and that's the most important stuff. And as I got from my meal that represented the last of the petty cash, this is important words to remember. I just got this yesterday. It says, hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And that's what we're going to do. Yeah, we all should be slightly waiting, but you shouldn't let it take over your life because think of all the things that have come and gone and haven't really ended in disaster. Life goes on regardless, but being prepared is important. But for me, it's more about feeling like all the stuff culminating and not being able to take advantage of it in ways that throughout all my adult life, I've been in these situations where I've seen some of this stuff coming, and maybe I've turned $500 into $5,000, which is like a amazing return, but the amounts of money are overall fairly meaningless. I need to turn like $50,000 into like $500,000. That's what would be nice. And that's what the feeling is to see this is like a once in a probably multi-generational shift that we're seeing in the world financial system. And to know it's coming and not be able to take maximum advantage of it is very frustrating. Yeah, as SPQR says, dollar is turbo going down this year. Gold has seen a couple brutal spikes up, which I think I was kind of not really on board with the idea that there would be some kind of gold revaluation scheme. And I've talked about why I think that's the case, mainly because it doesn't really accomplish anything, and there's other ways they can effectively print money if they want to, and that's all it really is a backdoor money printing scheme. But it is possible, and it's certainly is the case that all the other big institutions worldwide, central banks, are stacking gold massively. And regardless of whether they do an official US government gold revaluation or back or any sort of currency with even partially in gold, that resources in general are going to be what is focused on when we see the fiat system kind of break down. And that's what's different about this time is that this is happening to not just a currency, but to currencies as we know them, to the entire fiat system, debt-based fiat. We're seeing debt, uh, the diet for debt going down. People are not buying up everything that needs to be. And as this, in terms of the sovereign debt, so bonds from all different countries, Japan, England, US, like they're going to have to continue to sell more and more debt at higher and higher interest rates. And as this continues to break down, people are going to want to buy it less and less. And to entice them, they're going to have to raise interest rates more and more. And that's why even if we get uh, the Fed lowering rates, it isn't necessarily automatically lower rates in the global debt markets. Those rates are set by the market. So the Fed can't just automatically decree that global markets for debt should be at a certain place. And when people don't want it, and it's obvious that this stuff is just continuing to be worth less and less, the rates are going to have to go up, prices go down, etc. Um, SPQR says supposedly if it's just 1% of US bondholders shift to gold, it would go to $5,000. Yeah, that is for sure absolutely the case. That was something I just watched a really good video with. I think it was Francis Hunt, Market Sniper, and the dude from I think it was called Capital Cosm is the channel, and one of the guys from Hong Kong, I forget his name. But to me, the interesting because they were talking about the exact same thing, like exactly how much money would shifting, like even a small percentage shifting into gold, what that would cause for the gold price to go up to $5,000 or even beyond that. And for me, I think, and I've talked about this before, like obviously gold and silver are the play. But if I'm looking at this and saying, walking through the scenarios, when this happens, we've heard of items going like no bid, which could happen in like bonds or when oil basically went no bid and you're having to pay to get rid of it. I very well think we could see scenarios where because the gold market is so tiny compared to the amount of fiat that is in the system. So not only would there be a massive, massive demand spike for it, if 1%, I mean, we're talking about a scenario where it won't just be 1% of US bondholders shifting gold. If we truly see a scenario where worldwide people are fleeing the debt market, there may be 50% of the money in the world going into gold. But even if it's just like 10 or 20%, that is insane. And the problem is not what will the price of gold be at that point. I think we may reach a scenario where there's like gold goes no ask. Like instead of something going no bid, meaning there's no one offering to buy it, there may be no one offering to sell it. Because if you're talking about paper money, I'm going to go play poker later. Paper money and not just the US dollars, but all fiat currencies really becoming something that people don't want. Who is going to be selling the most obvious and best alternative? No one who is buying gold right now, anyone who's buying gold right now is doing it specifically for the purpose of avoiding what's coming in fiat currencies and sovereign debt markets. So if when all this normies and major institutions and actual retail investors and everything decide that they need to start buying gold, who are they going to be buying it from? I mean, there's going to be some minor level of like mines or something maybe that have to sell it because, but even then, if the currency is worthless, the gold itself is just going to be more valuable to hold on to. So there could very well be a point where it doesn't make sense to price gold in fiat currencies. There just will be no one will. It'd be like asking what amount of sawdust would you sell your gold for? Like there's just no amount of sawdust that someone could pull up. It could be container ships full of it. And I would be like, what am I going to do with sawdust? Like maybe could use it for fuel or something, but and that could very well be the case at some point with fiat currency. And so what is going to be the benefactor of that? I don't know what second place is. Obviously, gold, silver, the metals will all be in the same boat. I've long said that I think that cryptocurrencies could function as a blow-off valve for that sort of complete lack of liquidity in the gold market just because no one's going to sell. So gold has always been the most liquid commodity, but that wouldn't be the case if no one was selling it. It's just as we always think of something being illiquid when no one will buy it, but that can just as well happen when no one is willing to sell it, or very few willing to sell it. Yeah, so the ask will be absolutely astronomical when priced in dollars. It will be like, I don't want your dollars. Like I said, it'd be like someone offering sawdust or you dirty socks for your gold. You'd be like, no, you have to offer me something that actually has some value when this doesn't have value anymore. So the gold price in dollars or in pounds or yuan, or it might be just infinite. And so all that dollars is going to be flowing into other things. Um, and the one thing I think that's set up to take that is probably cryptocurrencies to some extent. Normally, you would say also Forex markets with other foreign currencies would benefit from that if everyone was fleeing a particular currency. But we're talking about a scenario where people might be fleeing all currencies. And I think that crypto will be a huge beneficiary of that. Um, but I wouldn't get mixed up in any of the weird altcoins. I think I would say with top five, Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, even stuff like Litecoin, things like that. But yeah, I agree. And I've talked about this a lot specifically, and I think there's going to be a weird crunch there where what SPQR says here about maybe have a plan to buy physical assets during a currency collapse. Any ideas? Yeah, I think there'll be people who there will be an absolute panic for some kind of liquidity. And the best bet, I think, would be things that like land is an obvious one. If you can find up like arable land, farmland, even houses, multi-unit rental, any of that stuff, you might get insane deals on some of that stuff. Stocks are another one. Companies that are real companies. I wouldn't focus on any of these things that are blown out of proportion that aren't producing real things. But obviously, the miners will probably go up with gold. But there's other productive companies, maybe these like long-term blue chip companies that even through economic turmoil are not really going to go in anywhere, like the J&J's, Johnson & Johnson, stuff like that. These dividend aristocrat companies that have been around for decades and have raised their dividends every year, even through all the past financial, like we may see their stocks go well below what they're even worth, like actually worth. Um, and you may be able to buy up some of that stuff. Yeah, agriculture companies, food companies, companies that actually produce real stuff, even some of the pharma companies, stuff like that are distasteful. But we could see a lot of these companies that do real things go as there's this panic for any sort of liquidity. Um, I'd be able to turn a few ounces of gold and silver into generational dividend wealth, and that's the goal. So I would have some kind of plan. Obviously, what I've heard before, based just on historical, I think it was McIlvaney Financial or McIlvaney Finances, where the channel was, broke it down as to why a Dow. I don't really like the Dow. I think the S&P 500 is better. But just in general, looking historically at like how these dips have functioned in the past, um, he was talking about a Dow 3-2-1 ratio to gold, and that's when he'll be looking as like a signal to start offloading some of his gold. Because if you just hold on to it, it's unlikely that you will end up being incredibly wealthy. You will maintain your purchasing power, but if you never sell the gold and silver, then you're just going to maintain your wealth until we get back into a stable financial system of some kind, whether that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So if you just sit on it through the whole time, there's nothing wrong with that. You will at least maintain your purchasing power. But I think if you look for key points to offload some of it for other things when the pendulum has swung really far past equilibrium in the other direction, I think you could set yourself up for some really massive generational wealth, which is what makes me, like I said, what I'm most anxious about, because I feel like if I have enough resources, and I think even silver and stuff like that to withstand and survive the coming economic turmoil, but not to really like I said, maximally benefit from something that I know is going to happen. And the Dow 3-2-1 ratio that he mentioned was basically when the Dow and gold, when price of the Dow is only 3 times an ounce of silver, whether that's because the Dow has completely collapsed, silver has skyrocketed, or some combination of the two, then he would offload 30% of his gold to buy stocks. And then if it dips to where it's only 2-to-1, so the Dow Jones, a share of the Dow is only twice as much as an ounce of gold, then he would do another third. And if it gets down to 1-to-1, then he would do a third of the remaining amounts. He never has zero gold and silver, so it wouldn't be like it would be of each remaining. So if you had 100 ounces to start with, it would be 33, and then you'd have 66, so then it would be like 22 ounces. You know what I mean? Then you'd have 44, so then it would be a third of that. So you'd asymptotically, as in that math nerd say, approach zero, but you'd never run out of gold, even if it went to far beyond that. And I think it will go far beyond that. I think we could easily see it flip to where it's not just that the Dow is 3 times an ounce of gold. An ounce of gold might be able to buy multiple shares of the Dow. There could be if we really see that kind of crunch like I'm talking about. But I definitely don't think 3-to-1 is a bad starting point. But the main point is to have a point an official point, whether with your Bitcoin, with your gold, with your silver, with whatever, where you're looking to trade for some of these assets. And you don't have to do it with all of them. You never have to sell out completely, which would probably be a bad idea. But I definitely think having a point ahead of time is going to be smart because whenever you're in this, it really feels like it's the worst time to get rid of your gold. It's actually when it's the best time. It's really hard to see things from the big picture when you're in it and, follow the ideal of, you know, buy when there's blood in the streets, being greedy when others are fearful. CLM says there are always outstanding orders above market. I mean, there have been, but what are those orders going to be? Like I said, if we're talking about fiat currency being literally worthless, like what is your ask for your gold in terms of Zimbabwe dollars or German marks or some other extinct currency? You know what I mean? And if it truly goes that way, yeah, there might be some kind of asks, a few of them for people who have, some debt out there. Say, well, I owe $1 million on my house, so I guess I'll give you an ounce of gold for these dollars just so I can officially pay it off. But it's going to be super tight market for at least some period of time. Mr. Landfill says, I have some stocks in silver mines. Yeah, I mean, I think companies that actually produce things are going to go astronomically higher, especially gold and silver mines. And just like the video I was talking about recently, they touched on that as well. That obviously, if gold and silver go huge up, the miners are going to be big beneficiaries of that. And when people are looking for anywhere to put their money, stocks of companies that actually do something physical and inherently valuable, any sort of commodity stocks, productive companies, things like that are going to be much more beneficiary of that than companies that don't, than Build-A-Bear or whatever is pumping the market up right now. And of course, like City Prepper 16 says, coins in hands. That is the big thing about even that this has over things like Bitcoin, is this lack of any sort of counterparty risk. And now, like technically, Bitcoin and Ethereum and cryptos, there isn't the same type of counterparty risk in a financial sense of like you would have with some stocks and everything, but there is additional risks involved with all the infrastructure and access that you have to keep it safe, to trade it, to not accidentally mess it up and lose your keys and all this stuff. So I think there's a lot of benefits with cryptos, like I've mentioned before, but I'm definitely, if it comes down to it, a gold and silver guy for sure. And of course, a succulent Chinese meal, as CLM says, is a good way to spend your money. That's where I got my beautiful applicable fortune is from. That was my crime, was trying to enjoy a meal, a succulent Chinese meal. Bamsey Moy says, if I go for land if I can get 1% from current price and no ridiculous tax on possessing it. Yeah, we are probably going to get boned with taxes. There's going to be the government will probably increase taxes up until it doesn't matter anymore. Because they're going to need revenue more and more up until it gets to a point where it just doesn't matter. There's no amount that you could tax. And I think we're close to that. They're going to do it because they don't know what else to do. But we're getting to the point where the amount of money they need, taxation is irrelevant. Like there's just no amount that you could tax. We're already there, technically speaking, when people talk about taxing the rich and rich aren't paying their fair share. If you run the numbers, you could take every penny from all these billionaires and it would only fund the government for like a few years. Just take everything they own. It's a spending problem. It's not an income problem. DV Vincent is watching you for 15 years. Best to you and fam. Wet wipes are worth more than cash. Yeah. Yeah. You can use some dry wipes or wet wipes. And I appreciate that. It's a long time, man. It has been a while on here for sure. CLM says, no doubt will be tight, but a futures market is very dynamic. Yeah. These are going to be like brief because the market isn't just you can't exist in a situation where there is no liquidity, nothing's working for very long. Something will pop up. People will find a way. And that's kind of my point, is that there will be a blow off valve. People won't just shrug their shoulders and go home. Like it's either a complete collapse into economic dirt nap where everything freezes up and we go full Mad Max, which I don't think would happen, hopefully, or people find a way to make it work. And my point is just that obviously gold and silver will be the best, the quickest, and the most dramatic beneficiary of that, but it'll quickly get to a point where that market absorbs everything it can, and then people aren't going to really be willing to sell anymore enough for it to work continuously day-to-day basis. Um, and people will start using something else. And I think that's kind of what the government is expecting. And it's why they're doing these stable coins and even the corporate stable coins is they know that there'll need to be some kind of backup to the currency system. And I think that's one of the things that the people who follow like the whole Brent Johnson um, dollar milkshake theory is it what he's describing there with the whole like tripling dilemma type effect when you have reserve currency and the dollars and how people require dollars is that he's still thinking within the system. It's not incorrect, but he's talking about a system where there's just a general economic turmoil and not a complete collapse of the entire fiat system. The whole idea of talking about people wanting dollars and who will want them and whether it's outside the need for dollars outside the company to pay their debts and everything is just doesn't even make sense when you're talking about an actual complete collapse and abandonment of the central bank fiat system debt-based currency model, which is what I think is eventually going to happen. And that's also what people are getting wrong about BRICS is that BRICS isn't some big military alliance. They don't have to come up with a system that's a new reserve currency or better than a dollar. Like if this really breaks, people are going to be looking everywhere for anyone. Like I said, think of it as if your dollars all of a sudden literally turned into sawdust in your hand and you were like, I need to do something with this before I lose all my money. And you go running around being like, hey, do you want these dollars? And everyone would be like, not really. I don't really want sawdust. I want something that other people will take. And you're like, yeah, people will take this, and you'd be really frantically trying to get someone to take the dollars before everything just is totally worthless. And it's really hard to see exactly how that process is going to go down because everyone is going to be not wanting that to happen. And as mentioned, you guys should go watch this video on Capital with King Kong. His name is King Kong Young or something like that, and Francis Hunt because they talked about so many of these things. Such a good video, and that was the point there too. Is that like all these people talk about China and other countries like Japan being able to like hurt us by dumping their debt if they want. And they were pointing out that like that's why would they want that? They don't want their assets to become worthless. They're trying to get out. Like, yeah, they could just like Elon Musk could tank. It'd be like saying Elon Musk could hurt people by tanking Tesla stock, by trying to sell it all at once. But why would he do that? He would want to get maximum value. He's going to try to sell it slowly and buy up other things so people don't notice. He's not going to dump it on the market just to hurt. Even if he wanted to hurt some other shareholders, he's not going to cut off his nose to spite his face. And I think that China and the Arab countries and all the BRICS nations are in the same boat. Like they don't want to just dump all their bonds on the market and not get full value from it in absence of something that, at least right now, is a better option. So I think that they are kind of just hoping to slowly get out or wait until they can find a better option. Florida tax on land houses is insane. Yep, it's ridiculous. I have heard talk of Ron DeSantis maybe potentially doing something about property taxes, maybe even talking about eliminating them. That would be great. I don't even care I mean, obviously taxes are shitty and there's way too many of them. But property taxes specifically are so onerous and heinous because it prevents you from like actually owning property that I would rather them just take that same amount of taxes and put it somewhere else. Put it into the income tax, put it into the sales tax or whatever. Just take it off the property tax. You should always have a primary residence that is free from property taxes. I don't even care if the total tax burden stays the same. Just get rid of that. It's so shitty. Property taxes are definitely unreal. CLM says unreal inflation is 10% per year every 5 years. Yeah, I mean, that's what people are starting to wake up to is realizing that the numbers are completely wrong. 3% a year, 2% a year. Give me a break. Everything we see, we look at it fucking doubles every few years. Ridiculous. And people are starting to wake up to that. Prep hard. Absolutely. HTP. In short, you are forced via government forced to fund your own replacement and get to keep about 10% of your money. If we aren't in the streets by now, it's never happening. It's going to get weird. live free, die well. Absolutely. But like I said, the system is always the same. Luckily, most of us, myself and most of us watching, have at least the basics of survival taken care of: food, water, some amount of energy. But I'm getting worried about wanting to be able to maximally benefit from all this stuff. And that is stacking these as quickly as possible to, almost immediately trade it for gold and silver. So I'm going to be trying to tighten my belt, not spend money on anything. This little camping trip I went on is going to be probably my last newly booked vacation for a while, even though we did this very cheaply. It was a friend's place in Vancouver. Slept on a couch for a couple nights and camped. Tickets were like $150 to fly up there, so I really only had to spend a couple $100. It was not bad at all. And I managed to prevent the communism from seeping into my body. But one thing they got going for up there, I will say, is there's no fatties up in Vancouver. Everyone's walking around in shape. Of course, you still have to be Canadian, but yeah, they're in shape at least, which is nice. So I'm going to be doing the drawing in a few minutes for the three prizes, including this sweet Gerber knife. And for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, the prizes for next month for the Patreon members are I'm going to be giving away one of these front towards enemy happy Claymore man. Like I've got him right here, my Claymore buddy. Actually, it says front towards friends. Sorry, that's why he got happy. He just wants hugs, deadly hugs. And a mossy oak 8.5-inch fixed blade knife with Kydex. It's actually overall 8.5. It's not an 8-inch blade, but it's a really beefy, pretty ergonomic knife with a sheath that has a lot of different attachment options, belts, and everything else. So we'll give away those two things next month. And yeah, so you guys got anything else last minute we want to cover before I do my drawings? And that this month's drawing, the prizes I'm giving away, or for the people who were in the Patreon group for last month, we have our U.S. Armed Forces Nuclear Survival Manual, Micro Survival Fishing Kit, and this Gerber knife with active retention. Nice satin finish on there. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to do the Gerber knife first, and this is for people who are on. And if you, in the meantime, post some, if you have any topics you want to cover here. So let's see, we got our Patreon list up. Let's go with the number picker wheel. We got 150 active entries right now. So let's share that screen. Let's spin. This is for the knife. $99. All right, let's see what we got. 99 should be Dennis C. has won this one. So we're going to take them out of the drawing here. And we will do it again for the book. So let's do this now. This is for the book. $147. Who do we got there? 147 is Templar Survivor. So let's take them out now. And then we can. Chances are getting pretty good. One last time for the Micro Survival Fishing Kit. $50. Who has 50? 50, 50, 50. That is Niz. So Niz, you won the Micro Survival Fishing Kit. So appreciate you guys who were in that month. And for anyone who is signed up for the paid Patreon by the end of this month, you have the plushy Claymore guy and the Mossy Oak Knight. So appreciate you guys. Let's see if we got any last minute topics here. Oh no, I didn't cover the Venezuelan drug war. That was a big one. That actually was on written down here. I've had it. Venezuela. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. So that is it's weird because you see a lot of people, and in general, it's a weird situation because I'm someone who is quite libertarian, small L, in terms of philosophy, but it's also obvious that in the real world, um, unless everyone feels the same, it doesn't work without you violently protecting your way of life and everything. So I see the complaints, obviously, about lack of due process and things like that, even with immigrants, with the drug dealers and everything. But you have a situation where, and I've used the analogy of like people cheating in a football game before, um, where if you're just getting kicked in the nuts every play and the refs aren't going to do anything about it, at some point you're just being a cuck if you just appeal to the refs and don't kick them back to uh, protect your teammates. And like I said, we've had people who were flooding, and I mean flooding into this country by the millions for years, and we didn't get any due process with that when the prior administration was literally just welcoming, if not paying invaders to come in. So it's kind of just like you can't be a total cuck about it and be like, oh, well, due process, and like you can only fight fire with fire to some extent. And I obviously see how this is it's dangerous for the government to have these kind of powers. And because they're obviously going to be used against us at every opportunity too, when people who disagree with us. But that's why it's important to fight these issues early and hard and not let them get too bad. And it's very possible to allow yourself or your country to get into a position where there's no good outcome. And we're there in a lot of ways. And the thing that I don't like, I have really no problem. But the point to me is that this is not about the drugs, the Venezuelan thing. I don't care if they're going to blow up people trying to get into the country illegally. Just blow them all up. Just do it to everyone. But my point is that I this isn't about the drugs. There's so many things they could have done over the years to stop the drug. Most of it can happen at the border, enforcing sentencing guidelines and everything else here in the U.S. So much more they could do. This is about energy. China has been making a play, as far as I know, for potentially wanting Venezuelan energy as we get more and more detached from the BRICS nations and specifically from Middle East oil. Well, that looks, our alliances there look potentially in doubt over the next 30 to 50 years. I really think this is all about a play for locking up energy independence on this side of the world and not being reliant on it, not just for ourselves, but specifically for keeping countries like China from getting access to it. Because energy is big, especially as we move into this AI um, kind of bubble where people are building data centers the size of Manhattan. We're going to need a lot more energy than we would have. But I definitely think this is mostly the the Venezuelan thing is mostly about their um their oil. As cliched as that is, that we're always just blowing everybody up for their oil, I think that's more what this is about. And don't forget it's Preparedness Month. I basically every other month. Yeah, I mean, I always forget because we're living in a time where it's so important to be prepared. And no, it's not the end of the world yet, Mark in LA. We won't get that lucky. When it's end, you don't have anything to worry about. If the world blows up, it's just the great and shitification. Everything's just going to get worse and your dollar's going to buy less, but we know it's coming, so you can act accordingly. You can stock up on the things that you need, and you can put every extra worthless piece of linen, which is all this is. People are still willing to foolishly accept it in exchange for real money. So that's what I recommend you do. That is survival advice, not financial advice. But appreciate you guys watching. I'll be making more videos soon, and talk to you soon.